the first season of Daredevil Born Again just wrapped up, and honestly, I gotta say, it was not that bad. I can honestly say that I enjoyed a lot out of these 9 episodes. Despite all the news of people getting fired and the reshoots and new directors being brought on, it's kind of a miracle this show wasn't a dumpster fire. I think most people can agree that the show had a few things it could have improved on, maybe a lot of things it could have improved on, but in the end, the show showed some great potential. However, there seems to be a narrative surrounding the show that I disagree with the majority of people on. So if you don't know, Daredevil Born Again brought in new directors, and these new directors are directly responsible for the entirety of episode 1, episode 8, and episode 9. These are the episodes that are believed to be completely redone and contain no trace of the old show. So the narrative I'm seeing online is that the rest of the show was like mid at best, but the last 2 episodes brought it back on track, and they even reached the heights of the OG Netflix seasons. Now, I 100% disagree with this take. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot to hate about every single episode, but the last 2 episodes definitely didn't save the season, and it definitely did not reach the heights of the OG Marvel Netflix shows. When the show first started airing, I was cautiously optimistic, but by the time I watched the finale, I was pretty disappointed. So let's talk about this finale. Why was I so disappointed and so frustrated by it? Now, I can admit, I think I'm in the minority here, but I did not enjoy the season finale of Daredevil Born Again. Some of the biggest issues I have with it is the writing and just the plot in general of how everything goes down. The plot of this final episode is pretty ridiculous in my opinion. Let's start with the most egregious part, how Karen Page was introduced back into the show. So we start with a blackout for some reason, then Frank is already in Matt's apartment during the blackout, and we assume Matt has just parkoured his way back with his ass hanging out back to his apartment. Then the task force shows up and they get their ass beat, and then one of them has a martyrdom perk on, and then Matt and Frank jump out of the building, but thankfully Matt has a grapple so they don't fucking die. And then they land on top of a stranger's car, and Matt and Frank just get up from the fall like it was nothing. They just walk it off, and then all of a sudden Karen just pulls up at the right moment to scoop up Matt and Frank. Now, the timing of this whole scene was just a little too ridiculous. So you're telling me Karen was somehow able to find out Bullseye has escaped, and then she calls Frank, and then she hops on a plane to New York, and then she shows up right when Matt and Frank finish fighting, all in like the same day? This was just a little too ridiculous. I cannot suspend my disbelief.
I heard Poindexter escaped, called Frank, and hopped on a plane.
But that wasn't the only baffling scene in this episode. First of all, why did they even black out the entire city in the first place? Seems like a little overkill, no? Just to kill one dude? Or maybe it's just so the task force could do whatever they want. But spoiler alert, the task force could already do what they want because they're the fucking law. And did they know Matt is blind, so a blackout doesn't affect his abilities? And why does Fisk want to kill Matt? Didn't Matt just take a bullet for you? So shouldn't you do him a solid and repay the honor? And let's not forget, the last episode, it was Bullseye who was trying to kill you. How come you're not trying to hunt down Poindexter? And also, why does Frank march into Red Hook by himself? What was his plan exactly? Did he want to die? He's been hiding all this time, and then he just decides to get a high score by killing a bunch of cops? And also, why is there an entire basement of prisoners at the end? Wilson Fisk's violent nature is no secret, but does he secretly have a freaky nature? And let's not forget the cherry on top, the ending team up. So Matt is saying this epic closing monologue, and then who's gonna help him take back this city? Yeah, you get a handful of honest cops, and 2 of them are close to retirement. Like, why? Why did you tease and hype up this moment when you know you can't deliver? And I know Cherry gets a lot of hate, but I can't hate him too much because he was part of one of the greatest shows of all time, The Wire. So I propose we distribute some of the hate Cherry gets into these side characters. Honestly, almost all of the side characters introduced in Daredevil Born Again kind of fucking suck. Okay, maybe the Wilson Fisk meat rider was alright, but we got Heather, who was like tolerable for like most of the season. It felt like a natural ending point to just have her silently go her own way by the end of it, but they decided to keep her, and now she works for Fisk now for some reason. Even though Daredevil saved her life, she still sides with Fisk for some reason. Buck was tolerable for most of the season as well, but by the end of it, I was just sick of him. I get that he's supposed to be this enigmatic character. The show desperately tries to give him like aura, but he just ends up auraless. And I also think BB had a lot of potential, but she's not even in the damn show. Instead, she lives on through these TikTok clips they keep spamming throughout these episodes.
So what's your take?
And I also wanted to mention Muse and White Tiger. I actually really like these characters, and I was really invested in their storylines in their respective episodes. Almost everyone can agree that they just died off way too quickly. Their stories definitely could have been expanded upon, but beyond my big problems with the writing, I have a bone to pick with the creative choices they decide to make in the series. The first is licensed music. Look, I have nothing against Radiohead. In fact, Radiohead has been used many times in Hollywood and to great extent, but the needle drop they do in this season finale, it just doesn't fit. This was so distracting and took me out of the moment. Now, if you're a fan of Radiohead, this might have hit better for you, but as someone who hasn't heard of the song before, it just felt odd hearing this song play as Matt is trying to deliver this epic epilogue monologue. It was just so distracting and just took me out of the viewing experience. And it's not the only time I disagree with the music choice either. The episode before this, when Matt gets shot, taking the bullet for Fisk, all of a sudden you start hearing a children's choir and then drums start playing. Matt just got shot. He took a bullet for Fisk. Why am I hearing a beat go off? The choice of music in this series consistently doesn't fit what's happening on the screen. I would have much preferred if they used something without lyrics, using an original score, or just sitting in silence. But what's even more annoying than the constant music is the constant zoom-ins that they keep doing. These constant digital zoom-ins. Like, can the fucking camera stay still for 2 seconds? Like, the editor needed to lay off the keyframes, bro. Like, stop fucking zooming in. It just looks so cheap. It just looks like they did this in Premiere Pro. It does not look like a multi-million-dollar Marvel production. And not to mention the constant stock footage looking B-roll of New York, and mix that in with the TikTok clips of the BB report. It is so much. Like, I get it. The city is part of the show. The city is such a big part of Daredevil, but every time they show these clips, it just doesn't add anything to the show. And every time they do it, it just feels the same. And on top of that, they have the digital zoom-ins every time, so it all just looks so bland and repetitive, and it just all feels so soulless. Now, it would have been much better if it was actually BB out there reporting, because he's a reporter, right? If it was her reporting on the street, mixing in with these TikTok clips. But most of the time, it's just B-roll of the city with the BB report overlay that just adds nothing to the show. But even worse than that is the laughably bad ADR. If you pay attention even somewhat closely, some lines in the show, it's so obvious they re-recorded it.
I promised the city that protect him from this freak. And we have nothing.
And how can we forget the terrible CGI? I can't believe this is just a normal thing to expect now in Marvel shows. With all that being said, I don't want to be too negative. There's definitely way more things that I hated that I could break apart and nitpick. But like I said at the start of the video, I did enjoy a lot of what's going on in the season. Things like the White Tiger trial, that had me seated.
You intervened that night because you're a hero.
Matt, don't do this.
Mr. Ayala, yes or no? Are you the vigilante known as the White Tiger?
Objection! Objection, Your Honor!
There's also the bank heist episode. Yusuf Khan and Matt Murdock had some genuinely great chemistry. There were plenty of moments that were heartfelt and funny in this episode. Except at the end, where Matt just decides that this Irish guy doesn't get to use one of his legs anymore. And the best scene in this entire show, Matt and Frank just talking to each other.
Look at what it got me.
Oh, I apologize. I didn't realize you were a victim in all this.
I used that pussy-ass word my entire life. You don't put it in my mouth, you understand that?
All right, so you tell me, what's going on, buddy? What are you doing down here? Day after day, just hiding out?
I ain't hiding from shit. You walked in that door.
Plotting your next kill?
Here. You goddamn right.
Great, how's that working?
You want to go out there on the street, have at it. But I do not have time for your candy-ass hero shit.
This was the closest thing that resembled the original Netflix series. I didn't enjoy a lot of things about Born Again, but you can see that there were flashes There were glimpses of greatness in this. As much as I didn't like what the reshoots had to offer, I'm still very optimistic for season 2. This time they have a clean slate, no excuse of having to reshoot stuff or working with old material. They even have the OG actors to work with now. I can only predict that things are going up from here. But those are my thoughts on Daredevil Born Again. Overall, the show is like a 6 out of 10 to me, maybe 5 out of 10 depending on how bad the bad parts piss me off. But were there any points that I make that you agree with? Maybe you disagreed with everything I had to say. Either way, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching the video. Peace.